This is the biggest hack that will improve all your relationships all across the board as a sixth sensory and an intuitive, and it is to be your authentic self. You might think, oh, if I'm my authentic self, I share with people that I believe in spirit or that I feel very spiritually connected or I have a unique belief system. What's going to happen is other people are going to judge me and they're going to be skeptical, and that's going to make my relationships worse. Initially, it might appear that way. And yes, if you're in other people's faces about it and you're shoving your belief system down their throats, then yeah, they're probably going to respond negatively. But what I mean by being your authentic self to improve all your relationships across the board is not to necessarily talk about everything in front of them that you're doing as an intuitive, but rather practice creativity on your own time and really develop your sense of inner beauty and passion, and keep working on that on a regular basis rather than getting into a negative space in your head about your relationships or about your creative practices in general. Now, we all have negativity to a certain extent. It's just that a majority of us, including five sensories and even a lot of six sensories, live in negativity all the time. It's like we're always scared that if we step on the wrong crack on the sidewalk, that we're gonna have bad luck, that we're gonna have a bad day. And how could we ever start a creative project because we'll be paralyzed and we'll fail, and all of the five sensories in our lives will criticize us if our projects don't go very well. And that's probably true. They will criticize you. Having said that, that doesn't mean that that's going to ruin your relationship. It's interesting. Five sensories think that your creativity is threatening, and they may criticize you and say that you shouldn't be working on these projects, that there's other things to do. But ironically, it's by taking your intuition and your right brain to a new neighborhood that it actually keeps you out of trouble in your relationships with five sensories. They may not witness immediately the results and understand that you pursuing your creativity is going to keep you out of trouble with them. But what it's going to do is focus your energy and attention on something positive that's contributing to society, rather than worrying about your flaws as a human being, as a sixth sensory, or worrying about, is my partner cheating? Are they doing something wrong? Am I doing everything I need to do in the relationship? Often our worries and our negativity sabotage the relationships rather than help us build the relationships. And that's why being creative and being connected to your authentic self is one of the most authentic hacks that actually improve your relationships, even if the five sensories disagree on the surface with what you're doing as a creative pursuit. Now, what kinds of creative pursuits can you engage in? Well, there are many, and it really depends on what calls to you creatively. Anything that you enjoyed as a kid is a clue to what kind of creative pursuits you should pursue now. For example, when I was a little kid, I loved swinging. I loved swinging so high. I would go as high as possible and then jump from the top of the swing at the highest point possible and then jump to the ground. That's just something I loved to do as a kid. And so what I decided to do when I started becoming more physically active is take up aerial silks, because it allows me to climb up the silk and do tricks and be high up in the sky like I loved when I was a kid. And those creative pursuits are what are going to keep you focused and keep you out of trouble. But maybe your creative pursuit could be writing a book. Maybe it's time you go to a workshop and really learn the skill of writing so you can share and contribute your wisdom to the world. Maybe you need to grow content on social media and create a presence. Now, a lot of five sensories will criticize that because they think, oh, it's not growing fast enough, you don't have 3 million followers yet, and therefore, the followers are actually a vanity metric. They're not really that important. So when you're creating content for people, it's more important that you engage them and you create a community rather than pay attention to the number, because there are a lot of big content creators who have millions of followers, but after a certain period of time, a lot of those drop off, and they're not even paying attention anymore. The important thing is to have people active, engaged, rather than worry about the numbers. And number two, it does take some persistent effort and some skill to learn how to grow on social media. And so it's not something you're going to succeed at overnight, because it doesn't look like you're going to succeed right away. The five sensories will get kind of suspicious and go, oh, it's not working. I've had that happen quite a bit. And what I realized is that they're just trying to protect me, actually. They have good intentions coming from their negative thoughts to protect me from failure or to protect me from feeling bad that my numbers are not bigger or whatever it is that they're trying to protect me from. And what I realized is I just have to let that go. So when we pursue our creativity as six sensories, as intuitives, it's tempting to think that we're doing something wrong because others are criticizing us. And it's like, oh, it's so scary to put myself out there to be judged by other people. But you actually have to lean in that direction and keep developing and keep creating and improve yourself. And you are going to go through awkward phases where you look back at some of your old content or some of your old writing or works and you're going to go, oh, that was so crappy. But that's part of the process of creating, and you have to go through that awkward phase when you're bad at something for a while in order to improve. And we have to be able to weather that storm of receiving both unconstructive and constructive feedback and get through it in order to create more and more content that people enjoy. And why is this so important for our relationships? Like I said, it keeps our mind out of negativity. So one of the common failures that people don't really recognize in relationships is that they're just really paranoid or really worried about the other person, and they unconsciously talk to them a lot. They're trying so hard. They're like sending a lot of messages. They are calling them nonstop, asking them, well, when is the commitment coming? And rather than worry about that, that's the biggest sabotage that you can do for any relationship. You get your mind out of that worry track in your brain if you force yourself to work on your creativity. And not to mention, your creativity can help you be financially independent too, so you don't have to rely on a partner. And that's also very important. You always want to be independent, because when you're independent and in charge of your own life, you can create the energy, you can create the surroundings in your life that are positive, and you don't have to worry about an abusive person walking in because you're reliant on their income or you're reliant on their company in any way. Be your own best company and let people come in if they're meeting your high standards and your high vibration. Absolutely let people in. Then that's amazing. If you can find a partner or great friendships, it doesn't have to be a partnership, by the way. Great friends and great community is amazing, and that can be your relationships of choice as a sixth sensory as well. Whatever you let into your life, it should be a positive influence. And nobody's going to be 100% perfect. There are five sensory people in our lives. We will find them. They will come in, and they're occasionally going to say bad things. If we feel it's coming from a protective place where they're genuinely trying to help us and we're mature enough to discern that, then we can just sort of politely ignore them, right? And you can still have them in your life as your friend, but just understand when they're in that mode that you're not going to be hanging out with them for very long, and let them go be paranoid on their own time. Having said that, if they're constantly being really, really negative and derogative and they're saying a lot of bad things nonstop, then give them a lot of space. Could even be a family member or somebody who has a relationship long-term with you in your life who's like that. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to cut off the relationship. Just give them a ton of space, because they don't even realize that you focusing on your creativity is kind of stopping you from fighting with them. Because otherwise, if you weren't pursuing your passion, if you weren't creating your content, if you weren't writing, you weren't pursuing your sports, what would you be spending your time on? You'd probably be going over there and bickering with them and yelling at them and destroying your relationship, right? Like, we tend to do that, and we tend to nitpick when we have too much time that's unstructured, and then we'll get into these patterns of thought in our mind, and we'll go sabotage our relationships, or we'll get really drunk and then we'll yell at them or something. And it's better to just not go there. It's better to not consume alcohol. Don't see them. You don't have to argue with them, disagree or agree. Just leave them alone and do your creative pursuits, because your creative pursuits are your future. That's your contribution to society, actually. And even if you don't ever make any money from it, you're doing something good for the world. You're leaving a legacy for people that are going to be positively impacted by your work. So it's worth continuing the effort to excavate your authentic self, to excavate your creativity, and constantly commit to creative practices every single day. And as much as I love meditation and exercise, if you're a sensitive person and a sixth sensory person, I think creativity might be at the top of the list over exercise and meditation, which says a lot because I've said how important those are in the past, and they are extremely important. But committing to your creativity might be the very lifeblood thing that you just need in order to be a happy person and to be authentic and give to others. And you can spend 24/7 in your creativity if you really want, you know? And that stops a lot of bad stuff from happening in your relationships because you just don't have time for the drama. You don't have time for the bad stuff, and you're not even thinking about it.